Hello and welcome to Mike's Mass Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pashota. Happy Sunday to you. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. And we are recording today because we're coming up on the Major League season very soon. March 28th is opening day. And for the Mets, they have a number of storylines to watch for. So that's the point of this podcast is to go over the different storylines that are going to be percolating for the Mets as the year goes by, and what we've seen so far. So, number one storyline that's going to be on everyone's mind is going to be what's going on with Pete Alonso, and that is still an ongoing question. We haven't heard anything to the contrary of what we know so far, which is that both sides are still very far apart. No one really knows what's going to happen, if a contract could be made before the end of the season, or if it's going to go down to free agency, if Alonso's camp is going to listen to different offers from other major league teams. There's everything still in play, and we haven't really gotten a decision as to what's going to happen. And if I was going to give my prediction, I was going to say that a contract won't be done before the end of the season. It doesn't seem likely. His agents have made it pretty clear in terms of that they are very willing to entertain other offers, because whatever they're asking for, and the biggest problem is that we don't really know. There's been no leaked contract offers from either side as to what's going on. So it's kind of left in the dark as to what exactly the problem is and why the two sides seem so very far apart still at this point. Because it feels very much like Alonso saying all the right things and Steve Cohen saying all the right things. They say, we want to get a deal done, we want to keep him here, I want to stay here. Okay, great. Why can't we get that done? What's the problem? Why does it feel like this is slowly moving closer and closer to a situation that the Mets had not that long ago with Jacob deGrom, or with Zach Wheeler, Daniel Murphy, or any of the number of star players that were on the Mets who were entering their contract year, and then some seemingly management couldn't get the deal done before some other team swooped in and offered money and perhaps a much more enjoyable location for him to play, and that was that. For Alonso, he's made it pretty clear that he seems to want to stay. I don't really know what exactly the problem is, because if you look at Alonso, you have a elite power hitter. You could say he is the best power hitter in baseball, given Aaron Judge's health issues. Alonso has not had any similar issues, knock on wood. But we assume that Alonso will be healthy, and if he starts off the 2024 season on a hot streak, let's say like he hits like 20 home runs by the end of May, and he's on pace to hit somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 home runs, entering his contract year, he's going to be demanding a lot more money. I think at that point, I think the contract would seemingly go up even further, and his performance in the 2024 season is going to be a big indicator as to what kind of contract he ends up gaining. I think the Mets are somewhat betting that he's not going to perform as well as maybe some people might expect a player entering his contract year to go into, but I think he's going to end up having pretty much the same year that we've been seeing from Alonso the last few years, which is 40 home run power, over 100 RBIs, playing some decent first base, finishes of WAR somewhere in the neighborhood of 4, and that's the kind of play that we get. And it's money that deserves to be paid. And for a player who has as much, not just like on the field contributions, but also off the field contributions, he's a big leader in that clubhouse. People seem to respond to him. He's a face of the franchise. You could say probably the only remaining face of the franchise that they have. So you have to wonder why exactly a deal can't be done at this point. And it does seem more and more like it's going to go to free agency. So that would be my prediction, that we're not going to get any of this settled anytime soon, and that we're going to be, as Met fans, going down to the wire, wondering if they're going to get a contract done. I think eventually a contract will be done, but it is somewhat frustrating and infuriating from just the Mets fan perspective, seeing a legitimate asset being handled in a way that makes it more and more dangerous. And I probably wouldn't feel quite as nervous about it if they had not just not just, but recently had the experience of negotiating with Jacob DeGrom. It's a different situation with DeGrom than with Alonso. DeGrom clearly didn't want to be in New York anymore. I think that did influence his decision to take the contract offer from the Rangers. But Alonso would seem to be much more better suited to playing in New York. He seems to like it here a lot more than DeGrom did. So I don't think there is that sort of playing, I don't think that is playing any kind of part in the lack of negotiations going on, or seeming lack of negotiations. But he is not going to end up going somewhere else. I think he will eventually resign with the Mets, but you feel like more and more this is just like oh gosh, like what happens if they don't resign him situation. And I'm really not here for it. I really want him to get a contract done, but it's going to be one of the ongoing storylines for this season. Next up would be Francisco Alvarez. And Francisco Alvarez, the rookie season, somewhat disappointing. Not so long ago, Francisco Alvarez was the top prospect in baseball, and was viewed by everybody as a clear all-star. They're not singing his praises quite as hard after his rookie year. I think people are still very much anticipating that he's going to eventually, hit his peak and reach his moment. But he's still very young, so there is that to play into consideration. But that rookie season really kind of took some of the wind out of people's sails about him and where exactly he kind of lands in the positional rankings for other catchers in the National League. Now, I'll say this: I think he will be a major factor for the Mets in 2024, and he has to be, because with the exception of Alonso and Lindor, there aren't a lot of power hitters on this team. You could say what you want about Mark Vientos, but until I see him do it over a full season, I'm not gonna buy into him being this legitimate power threat. So there's that, and then there's of course Brett Beatty and what can he bring to the table, and Brandon Nimmo. These are guys who might hit like 10, 15 home runs over the course of a full season, but I'm not really holding out my breath that these guys are 30 home run power threats. It's pretty much Alonso, Lindor, and Alvarez. And Alvarez, for all the flack he took for that rookie season, still led all backstops in the National League with 25 home runs last year. It was just everything else that he struggled with. He was barely hitting 200 for the entire year, and his OPS was was at different points of the season like under 600 or under 700, and he was really struggling to keep that up. He did not draw a lot of walks. And just struck out, and he was having a lot of issues over the course of that season. There were different points during the season where he also looked like a world beater. I was amazed. He looked like the best hitter on the team, and there were various points where I thought, oh wow, he might actually be better than Alonso in terms of being a power hitter, which is something to say. And there is something to watch with Alvarez, which is just in terms of the way that he hits. He is just a full swing. I'm going to pull this ball, and I'm going to pull it as far as it can be possibly pulled. And all of a sudden, you have a guy who's a legitimate threat as the best power hitter on the team that has Pete Alonso on it already. So you really have to look at him and say that, yeah, I can't believe this spark plug, 5'8", broad chested, kind of stout guy is in that same league. I mean, you expect it with Alonso. Alonso's so big and strong that you would expect him to be launching home runs 430, 440 feet. With Alvarez, it's just a little bit more funny to watch, but when he really gets a hold of one, it really just leaves the park in a different way. That's very different, and you just don't see catchers with that kind of power. Certainly not with the Mets, even though the Mets have certainly had Mike Piazza and Todd Hundley and other catchers who could definitely swing it. But he is a completely different animal and beast, and his performance in 2024 will be a big indicator of how the Mets perform, because if he can kind of keep up those stretches where he had that, I remember that May he had last season where he was just launching, it looked like a home run every night almost, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, did they have another Alonso in his hand? Is he going to hit 40 home runs? And he didn't. But as it turns out, he still had a little bit more seasoning to get to do in terms of getting up to a different par, because Alonso was ready right when he entered his rookie season. Alvarez clearly had a little bit more to go. I like what he's done so far in spring training. He's looked really great. He might be the best hitter on the team this far this spring training. So there's that. But his his potential is, I think, still massive. I think he could conceivably be a Silver Slugger candidate this year, the Contreras brothers and Sean Murphy and Will Smith, the Dodgers. These are all guys who are going to be sort of um, you know still trying to take that JT Realmuto, still trying to take that mantle of the best hitting catcher in the National League. But I think Alvarez has a lot of dark horse potential to sort of take that spot. And I think eventually he will hit that mark where I would expect him to hit 30 home runs this year, actually. I would do over the course of a full season. And the improvements that I think he's made in terms of his batting eye and selection, I think he knows what he was doing wrong. I think he's going to improve massively in this season, so that's definitely going to be a storyline to watch. Number 3, the state of the Mets rotation, and we were already off to a bad start with Kodai Senga going down. Senga missing the start of the year. It looks like he's going to be back sometime during May, though we have no idea when exactly he's going to be returning. It's all kind of health dependent. But right off the bat, that's not a great start to the Mets season. And so if you're already feeling like, oh god, like this is just like last year, I certainly feel it. So having your best pitcher at the beginning of the year, not a great way to begin the Mets rotation, particularly this rotation, which has a lot of question marks already. You're dealing with like the comeback year of Luis Severino. He's trying to make his comeback. And then you have Jose Quintana, whose health was a major question mark last season. It's going to be a major question mark this season as well, because that's what Quintana does. Quintana usually gets hurt. And then you have Sean Manaea trying to make a sort of a comeback. Well, not really a comeback, but Manaea trying to improve on what he's been doing the last couple of seasons with the Padres. And then you have Adrian Hauser, who's kind of the forgotten man in their rotation. I think a really good pitcher. I think people should be paying more attention to Adrian Hauser. But there's that him being at the 4th spot, and then you would think Kodai Senga here, but we don't have Kodai at the beginning of the year. So once again, I feel like we're going to be drawing right back into Tyler McGill and David Peterson being right in the thick of things. And if you're like me, you're like, oh man, we just cannot quit Tyler McGill. Tyler McGill will not go away. We can't seem to leave him behind. I'm very done with Tyler McGill. Maybe he'll show me something. I'm not holding out any kind of doubt. Peterson also not going to be available because he's dealing with his injury. We're not expecting Peterson anytime soon. So it's going to be McGill, and then the other various pitchers that are kind of floating around. But it's going to be McGill. It's very likely to be Tyler McGill taking that 5th spot. So Tyler, I'm very done with him. I've seen all of the he's got the split finger fastball, and he finished off last season pretty solid. Great. Do it over a full season, then you'll get my full ringing support of that guy could be a solid rotation piece. He's never done it over a full season. He's either gotten hurt or immediately declined after he was pitching well. So you got inconsistency and injury problems. Not a great recipe. I would say we're probably not going to have a great 1 month run with Tyler McGill where he somehow pushes his way back into the Mets rotation. That being said, I wouldn't put it past him to have that one great month and everyone's like, whoa, hey, Tyler McGill, let's go. And then immediately he gets hurt. I could see that very much happening, but we'll see. But the Mets rotation, they have a lot of guys, kind of waiting in the minor leagues in terms of being able to take over in a pinch, going to that group in a moment. But there is a lot of question marks with that Mets rotation as to whether or not Severino can kind of recapture his form. Severino, not that long ago, one of the best pitchers in the American League. Sean Manaea, same thing. These were guys who were considered top tier pitchers, and it's just been a kind of a bad run the last 3-4 years with those guys, where they certainly are no longer near the caliber that they were at that point. But I think particularly with Severino, I think Severino could still show flashes. He's looked really good in spring training. Not a great indicator usually, but thus far his stuff looks good. His mechanics look clean, and if he stays healthy, there's a good chance that he's a major comeback player of the year candidate. Speaking of comeback players, let's move on to our next storyline, which is Edwin Diaz. And Edwin Diaz absolutely tore up in his spring training debut in his last appearance. Looked incredible. It looked like 2022 again. I put out that short episode where I just kind of where I was just like drooling over like, wow, he's back. He's all the way back. I can't believe it. It's spring training, as I just said. Whether or not he can actually put this together over a full season, I'm sure the rust will be there when he's, pitching against actual major league hitters. But in terms of his stuff, I mean, he looked terrific. The fastball was in the upper 90s. The slider was sliding all the way out of the strike zone. No one seemed to be able to figure that part out. He looked completely back in 2022 vintage form. So his return is going to be one of the most interesting storylines of the season. And I would say he's got to be one of the favorites. If he pitches anywhere near his 2022 form, he's got to be one of the favorites to win Comeback Player of the Year for the National League. The Mets have guys like Severino who are going to be in it if they can be healthy. But Diaz, this is a guy 2 years ago was the best reliever in baseball. His return, if he returns back to form, he's still pretty young. There's a very good chance that he comes away with that award. And I really cannot describe how much Diaz was missed last year, where they really didn't have that elite closer, and everybody had to move up in that bullpen, and it really threw everything off. Having their ace back and pitching at the ninth inning will be a major thing, and then I cannot wait to hear Narco play, which I don't think I have yet. I think I've yet to hear Narco play since 2022, which is I think every game I've gone to, the Mets either won where they didn't need Diaz, or they lost in such blowout fashion that they never used Diaz. So I don't think I've ever gotten a chance to hear it. I'm looking forward to hearing it, even if it's on TV. I can't wait to hear Narco play for the first time at Citi Field. That place will explode. And it's going to be a major deal. I cannot wait for his return. People are going to be eagerly anticipating him coming back and pitching like he did in 2022, and that's what we have to hope for. And if he's pitching anywhere close to that, I think he's an absolute lock for the Comeback Player of the Year award. Last storyline to talk about is going to be the what I'm referring to as the baby Mets 2.0. And we were very familiar last year with Alvarez, Brett Beatty, and Mark Vientos. They're come up along with Ronnie Mauricio, who's out this year. But those young, talented position prospects that were coming up, who were going to sort of take the MLB by storm, and these are the guys that the Mets didn't part with. They were considered to be major pieces of the 2023 team to take over for the veterans who weren't performing well. It didn't really turn out that way. So we're now left with Baby Mets 2.0, which is going to be a lot of pitchers. It's going to be Mike Vassell and Blade Tidwell. But you also have the incoming Drew Gilbert and Luis Angel Acuna. And I firmly believe these guys are going to be coming up this year. That's the expectation from pretty much all scouts and all outside observers, is that these are young, talented guys who were in AAA, AA, and look very major league ready. I think Acuna could definitely slot in at second base pretty easily for the Mets going forward. Drew Gilbert could take an outfield spot if some players aren't playing well. Gilbert looks like a legitimate position piece. I mean, he played really great last year in 2023 when he came over to the Mets, and he's playing in Binghamton. So he's going to start the year at AAA, and I think he'll do very well there. And he's going to come up at some point during that season, either at the end of the year for that the traditional cup of coffee with all the rookies get, or he hits great in AAA and forces his way up to the major leagues, and maybe he's taking over for a not performing Starling Marte or Harrison Bader. If those guys aren't really hacking it, bring up Drew Gilbert, bring up Luis Angel Acuna if they're having trouble with Brett Beatty at third. Let's see what they can do in terms of getting that team to hit a little bit better. If it means calling up these guys and letting them get their shot at it like the previous Baby Mets did, I'm all for it. There is a talented group here. I certainly believe that one, if not multiple, of these guys is going to get traded, because I don't really see because they also have Jet Williams. Jet Williams, unquestionably the top prospect in the Mets system right now. So Jet Williams, where exactly he falls into this, I have no idea, because you look at that guy, he's a traditional shortstop, but they're trying to figure him out to find his way into the outfield. And then you have Drew Gilbert, and then you have Brandon Nimmo. There's a lot of positional blocking going on. They have so many middle infielders. So as much as I feel like, yeah, Luis Angel Acuna, he could be up and playing for the Mets in 2024 and being, put him next to Francisco Lindor and watch those two guys work. That'd be great. I also believe that those guys could definitely be traded. Like, there's a very good chance that it could happen because I don't actually know where a lot of these guys slot in, and they were kind of just grabbed by Billy Epler as positional chances. Then there's a very good chance that the Mets could just flip these guys again and send them off in a trade to bring in a more seasoned professional. Who that might be depends on how the season starts to play out for 2024. If the Mets are able to make a trade, either way, it's a major storyline for the Mets in terms of these young, talented guys coming up, particularly in the rotation, because Vassell could easily take over if McGill isn't pitching well or Senga's injury lasts even longer. I think that guy could step in. Same for Blake Tidwell, and there's other players that we could talk about, but there's definitely a big rise of talent coming up in the Mets system, and where these guys are going to end up actually coming in is going to be really interesting to watch. I would say we're probably going to see all those guys come up by the end of the year, barring any kind of setback or injury. But how well they play in AAA and AA, where they are playing, it's going to be fun to watch, and definitely a storyline to keep track of is when exactly these young kids are coming up and if they could potentially play better than maybe the previous generation of Mets prospects. So that does it for our storylines. Did want to mention that we're going to start doing our recaps for the 2024 season. I was doing that for the early part of the season, but it's just really hard to do 162 episodes. So I might do one recap per week, at the least. It might be two or three, depending on my schedule availability and how much time I have to do recaps. But I'm going to be doing short recaps at the end of every episode. So that night I'll record my episode and then post it the following day in the morning. So along with the recaps, I'm also going to be introducing what I call awards. So not what I call awards. These awards that I'm calling are going to be the following. So I'm going to hand these out every night to a Met player who performed well, and I've got three awards that I'm going to give out, which are the David Wright Award for Best Offensive Performance during the season, during the game. So that award will go to whoever had the biggest hit, best overall performance over the night. That'll go to that player on the Mets. Then we have the Tom Seaver Pitching Performance of the Night Award. That will go obviously to the either starting pitcher or relief pitcher who had the critical or key performance for the Mets that night or day. And finally, the Ray Ordonez Defensive Player of the Night Award. So these three awards will be given out every night by myself to one of the Mets players, and we're going to start keeping track of those. And then by the end of the year, I'm also going to kind of tally up who had the most awards, and then give out the Player of the Year. So David Wright Player of the Year, Tom Seaver Player of the Year, Ray Ordonez Player of the Year, and so those will all be tallied up at the end of the year, and I'll give those out as well. So just one thing to keep track of for the upcoming episodes. And so the next episode will be opening day. I think that's the way the schedule is going to play out because I'm not going to be available next weekend. So next time I record an episode will be after opening day. So that recap and those awards will go out for that one. So keep an eye on that. Other than that, we are ready to go for the Mets 2024 season. We're all ready for it, and we're all so excited for it, and I can't wait for it, the season to start. I'm really anticipating it. I'm not trading it like I thought it was earlier in the year. I'm feeling very happy about where the Mets are right now in terms of how they're going to play, and while I would hope for more little bit more security in terms of the Mets starting rotation and how well they're performing. I do feel encouraged by what I've seen so far, and I'm really anticipating the start of the season. So let's go Mets.
Thank you for listening to Mike's Mets podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike's Mets Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go Mets.